All right, we are now sharing a little bit here, and I want to continue where I left off yesterday. We were looking at creating the resource group, and we also created the API management. Um, I want to just show you guys a little bit of that and how that works and why I picked the names that I did. And if you know anything about software development, you know that naming things is actually the hardest job, believe it or not. I know that sounds stupid, but naming things is really difficult. So I'm going to go back to the portal here, and this is how you get there. It's very simple. And yesterday, like I said, we created that new thing, and I'm not seeing it here particularly. Okay, so I'm going to go to my home, and we've got some recent stuff here. Okay, and I have favorites here. This is one of my favorites. I can see all, and you still don't see it here. If I go to all resources, it's a very common thing, and see it here. This is the API management service. I created this last night in the East. Okay, that's the place you want to be for a lot of these demos. Because if you're going to continue with the other tutorials that I would highly recommend you do, you're going to find that you need to be in this zone, okay? The East U.S. zone or something like that, some American zone. You can't work with any zone you want with those tutorials. So just be careful of that. Sort of maybe go through the tutorial, check everything out, and then see what you're going to need, and then go over it and work step by step. Okay, so if you see here, I'm going to talk a little bit about these resource groups, okay? And you can see I have this resource group, AKD. That's the D is for development, the K is for me, and A is the first one, whatever. This is my naming convention that I'm going to be using. Now, if I was to go to production, then it would be AKP, or let's say the UAT systems may be AKQ. So there probably maybe 4 or 5 letters here, depending on how many environments. That's the environment. And this part here is kind of my major prefix. Okay. And then this is maybe a sub prefix. Now, you can say this is stupid. Like, who cares what the name is? Well, once you get into the billing aspect and stuff, you want to be able to search quickly on these things. So, for example, I'm coming up here, AKD, and I'm just going to press enter. You can see he's working on this, and he sees a resources. You see how fast I can find that. This is just a very, very simple example of a great naming convention. So another thing I want to mention is there's 4 fragments here. Okay, in the name, you can do as many as you want. There's many techniques on naming conventions, and you got to get this right up front. First things first, get this right. So I'm going to show you a tool now, and it's called the AZ tool, Azure tool, tools. And this is a great little website. And he has this resource builder. Okay, and we're talking about Azure resources. So you can go to locations. He talks about all these different locations. We were looking, I think, at this one here, right? Don't worry too much about this. What we want is the resources. Now, available fragments. You see, he has a 6-part fragment here. I'm just going to show you this so you get an idea. And that's a little bit messy. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. My apps are all going to be AKD, for example. Okay, and I don't want production because I'm going to include that in the name. Okay, now the location. Generally speaking, when you make resources, you're probably going to work in the same location, maybe 1 or 2 different locations, depending. But it's kind of redundant. It's not really necessary. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to crank this up. You could have an instance, and here's an application and a resource type. What I want, let's just go back here. If you see, my names have the prefix, then I have the resource, then I have what we call the work process, the workload and then the process. This is how I break my fragments out, or at least I try to do that to make up my 4. Okay, so we're just going to go back here, and that'll be the second part. So this is the application. Okay, that's this ADK part. We have like the dash there, but I'm not going to put that in. I'm going to leave that out. And then the resource type. And then what I need here is another random string. Okay, and that is going to be my workload. And this one is going to be my process. So I've got the maximums there, and then depending on the resource. Okay, so let's go back here for a second. Sorry. Boy, here we are. Now, if you see, this is an API management service. Let's just click on it so I get some text here and I can do a little bit of copying. Okay, that's the APIM, and I'm just going to copy that. This is I'm just showing you how I get here and what the example is. So now, if you look here, we have some columns, some filters, density, export. So what I want is I want to filter a little bit. Okay, so asset type. I could also go the name. Let's do a type here and a filter value. So I'm just going to pop that in. You can see it gave it to me. Okay. Now let's just click over outside here. So what's going on here? Not a whole lot, I'll be honest. What he's doing is I don't have the dash in there. And you'll notice that he's just shoved it all in. And now he says name does not conform to the regular expression rules. This is a management service instance. This isn't actually working that great, to be honest with you. It used to work better. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong here. Let's try something else here. I'm going to go like, say, res. Sorry, filters. And then res here. Okay. And this would be like a resource group. And see how he's doing it now? And he put the extra dash in. So I'm going to take that out. So what he's doing here, this is kind of cool now. This is what I was expecting. And this is very interesting. So you can see that for a resource group, he breaks it up nicely. Okay. So I'm just going to take that there and I'm just going to do the copy. And then I'm going to open up. Probably not a good idea to do it that way. Let's see if I can do something online here. And do we have any tools for this? I'm going to bookmark that, by the way, and I'm going to put it in my Yum Bub Jammin' or the Bubble Skim. Let's put it in there. Done. What's a good online tool? So let's go online Notepad. Okay. And there's all sorts of stuff like that. What I found, because I'm using Microsoft all the time, that I use a sidebar and it's really good. Long COVID, look at all this great stuff. So I'm going to add a note here and I just pop that in. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now let's go over here, back here, and I'm just going to sidebar this out a little bit better. Okay. So this is the API management, and this is the name I gave it here. Okay, and I can just, like I said, copy here. I can put this on there, pin all that stuff. It's all great. So what I'm trying to tell you here, this is the name I gave it for the API management, and where's the resource group is here. Okay, so let's just grab that there, copy the title. All right. So what am I trying to accomplish here? What I'm trying to tell you or trying to get across is you can see I have a little bit of a naming convention here. And these are what we call the Azure resource abbreviations. RG for the resource group and APIM for the API management resource. And then I've given it, this is the way I do it. Okay. This is a very smart, clever way because this part here is always going to identify, and I'm using the hyphen. This is the only separator you should be using if you're going to use a separator. I highly recommend a separator, and the hyphen is probably the best one. The reason being is you cannot always use the underscore. That's the only other one you could possibly use. You could use a dot. I mean, there's all sorts you can use all the time, and that's your choice. But be consistent. Do it consistently every time. It doesn't matter so much what happens on the third and the fourth fragment, but be consistent with it so it's helpful for you. What is really important is the first two fragments, and more so the first fragment. And the first fragment is basically a prefix that you are always going to use everywhere for every single resource. You're going to be consistent, even when you do like a workflow or a function app or something. Be consistent in your naming always. There's no reason not to. The naming convention is going to be used when you implement your Terraform, when you implement the infrastructure via Terraform, via pipelines in your DevOps or whatever, or your GitHub actions. Having a naming convention like this is going to save you upside down and backwards. This guy here is the third piece of the naming convention. So basically, let's just break this down. Okay, you're going to have 3 bytes. Okay, you don't need more. You could go with 4, but I recommend 3. So byte number 1 would be your company. Okay. So if it's SAP, then it would be equal to S. If it was, Swiss insurance, whatever, right? Then it would be S again. Okay. If it was Amazon, it would go with the letter A. Okay. Now, well, also another important part is you notice is all lowercase. There's no reason to use the uppercase. It looks better sometimes, but it doesn't always work. You're going to find that out, and you're just going to get stuck with that. So don't goof around with uppercase, just everything lowercase. So that's the first byte, byte number 1. And then byte number 2, these are examples, right? So byte number 2, okay, this is going to be your department, okay? Or let's say this is your, area of work. It could be any letter. But what you want to do is you want to make a little code up, okay, and make them all separate. And don't have, if you're going to pick an A, see, I'm picking an A, so don't come in here and make this an A also. Don't do that. Make this more like, let's say, a W, and then this would be department for D. Just doing this as examples. You guys have to make up your own what works for you. So let's say you're in the veterinarian business, right? Okay, and so we have in veterinarian, we either have a sickness, okay, and then that's in treatments. For example, we have emergencies work. Okay, that's our bread and butter. Is that stuff kids that break a leg or something, and treatments, and we have the kennel, um, help and support. Let's just say help and support, whatever. Well, these are our 3 main businesses, right? So maybe I call this, sickness and treatment. Now, T is probably not the best letter. S is not bad, but it's a pretty good letter to use, and sometimes I would stick away from it. So let's maybe go A, and then this is the emergency. Let's go E, and we'll go K. I'm just making this up. So this is the AK, so I'm in the Amazon K, or maybe this is for Angelo, or this is the Angelo business. See where I'm coming from? I'm just making stuff up here, but once I establish it, it's going to be the Angelo business, and we're going to specialize in the kennel help and support. So this is a kind of who we are, what we're doing, and this is the development namespace. Okay, this is all the stuff that I'm doing in development. That's what the D stands for. So right away I say, bang, this is the Angelo Kennel, or the Angelo Kennel help and support service. Everybody knows that in our. And so let's say the other guys, they're the guys that specialize in the sickness and treatments. They're going to be something like AA. But you see how that doesn't work. I'm already testing this out. This is, and then I said the S and the T. Why don't we call this the N? N's not a bad one, and I'll tell you why. Because it's just not bad. And now we go D for development. So let's go on the third byte now. Talk about that. Byte number 3. Okay. Now I know you guys are going like Kennel, like this is stupid. Like, why are you going on and on and on and on and on about these naming conventions? Well, because this is the toughest job. And if we can get this tough job over with now and get this defined, then I can continue doing what I'm doing. Otherwise, I'm just going to create a huge mess of crap that is all just stuff that you would never put into production. And there's another thing here. If you notice, I'm working in the portal. I'm live. This is in the directory, in the tenant. So I'm actually creating real stuff that's going to get billed. I'm going to have to pay for all this stuff unless I delete it. And then I want to separate what I delete, what I don't delete. And then I would want to basically dump out all these things that I make here and create my terraforming to make these via Terraform infrastructure as code. And then my source code to go along with it. Do you see? All you're doing is you're just naming something one after the other. Create this first, and then make this code and this function app, and it just goes on and on and on. If you don't have this naming convention figured out right at the beginning, you just you're just going to be wasting so much time. I can't emphasize enough how important a naming convention is if you're working in the infrastructure as code. It's kind of like the most logical thing. And this is a fundamental architectural sin made by even the best of the best. Well, they think they're the best, but they're not. It's nonsense. If you don't understand what I'm talking about here and you think I'm wasting your time, then tune out of this channel and go away and don't bother me anymore. Now, we're going to talk about byte number 3. If it was D, this is traditionally dev, okay? Also known as development environment, okay? This third byte is your environment byte. Why don't you put this in the name or something, like the whole word? Because every byte is critical here. As you can see, if you look over here on the screen, I can see this quite nicely. And I'm going to show you something here. Let's go to the monitor. And you can see names are coming up nice, right? Network insights. Let's take a look at that. And you can see things are a little bit short. Now, as I see how I'm going like this. Now, if you got names that are 30, 40 bytes long, you're going to have problems here. I'm telling you right now. I know this from experience. These ones work nice. So this isn't too bad here, right? But watch this now. You see how those names are just getting shorter and shorter? Now, here's another important part. This is RG. It says resource group, APIM app management service. You see, look at this one. Microsoft Skim Web, it's an app service. So some people say it doesn't matter what your name is. This is true. It doesn't matter. But I tell you, that's what I want. That's what every guy in this business wants. Then, look at this. This is coming up nice. Resource group. Let's look at this one now. I go for view. You can see it doesn't even, because it's so big. Let's do this one again. View. Nice and clean. You see that? Now let's go this here. Because he has to adjust. You see? It rolls off. Oh, it's a resource group. Yeah, well, it's a resource group. You see? Now you can argue with me all day. This is an app plan. Did you know that? That's the web host sample sim app plan. Well, you wouldn't have known that's an app plan from the name. You only know it because it's associated with the label there. It- People can argue with me upside down and backwards, and I'd love to have that argument, but I would need a lot of beers and everything else to go on. So I'm not going to go there. So I'm going to do L here. And you see what the problem with this L is? Okay. When I say lab, or do I say one? Or do I say letter I? Or do I say, okay? See what happened there? That's a capital I. Do not use that letter. Do not use the letter I, L, integration. No, you're not using that letter. Not a good letter. Okay. Lab is maybe not the best. Okay. Let's try an X maybe. It's not a bad letter, but it's a cross app thing. Wouldn't go with it. Let's do S here, and we're going to call the sandbox lab research. Okay. Environment. Okay. ENV. That's what the S would be. Now, so this is actually the first one. You notice I'm using letters and not numbers. Okay. You could use numbers. You could also do something like this. I don't recommend it, but people love to do everything, custom. So you could have like a dev one, let's say dev two. You could go, oh, I'm gonna go big D then. Okay. You see where we're going with this here, folks? This is garbage to do this. You could do the D1 here. Now you got a 2 bytes for the byte 3. Don't do this. Go a D for dev. And if you're gonna have a D2, then maybe you're gonna go like E. Okay, the next letter in the alphabet. And you're gonna call this is like your dev 2 development environment, for customizing or something, just something stupid. It doesn't really make sense that you would have 2 developments. It'd be like having 2 productions. Like maybe you should have a different tenant or something, or another subscription or whatever. So I'm not a big advocate on doing stuff like that. The point is we want to keep everything as simple as possible. So I'm going to do the letters that I would do. I would do a D for dev. Okay. And then I might do a Q for UAT. Okay, quality. Sometimes one's QA, quality assurance. And then I would do a P. Okay. Now, these are single letters. Not common in the industry necessarily, but this is going to be production. So let's just call it prod. Okay. Now you can see on these names, in my descriptions, they're a little bit, they don't work so good. So I'm going to go like that. And then here, this will be the long-term development. Now, this is, if you're noticing here, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a naming convention here also, and I'm giving nice, okay, so just dash production. So these ones up here, this one here is not a bad idea. I highly recommend you have a sandbox environment, okay? There's going to be subscriptions behind all this stuff, but let's get rid of that now. There you go. So these ones I'm going to get rid of. And this one I'm going to get rid of. So this is my 3-byte naming prefix. Okay. And I've shown it byte 1, byte 2, and byte 3. This is kind of cool because you could do stuff like this and whatever. And let's just get that there. So it's always A. That's done. And then it's just a question of picking between which one of these. I'm always this one. So these ones here, I could actually just strike them. I don't need those. But the other teams might, and I have them there for them. Okay. I'm just giving you some ideas here. Now, these ones I'm all going to use. Okay. But truthfully, I'm not going to use this one. Okay. Because a lot of guys wouldn't use that. but I don't care. And I'm not going to use these two for now either. We're only going to focus on that. So what is my abbreviation? Well, it would be A for always A, and then the K for the second byte, kennel, help and support, and then D for development. That's where I'm going to be working, AKD, and I'm just going to get rid of that. And this is my abbreviation. And so let's just get that up to the top here so everybody can see it. Okay, this is going to be equal to below. Now, getting back to Nitor, this has really taken a lot of time for this video, but this is the most important time you can ever spend is figuring out your names. And I think I've given you some good ideas, okay, and where I'm coming from and why I do what I do. Because people are always going, Kennel, what are you doing? So let's get back here to the resources here. And I'm going to show you how this kind of works. Okay. So, by the way, you can build this whole thing yourself. There's some good Azure examples in the GitHub for this type of tooling. I would build it and put it in-house for the people, honestly. If I had the time and everything, that's what I would do. Just shove it in there, give them a link to it, and then anytime somebody wants to make a resource, these fragments are already sort of organized for them. They can select from pieces and so forth. And it's really helpful. I want to show you that later. But all I want to do today is just give you some of the basics of where I'm coming from, because you're going to find what I'm doing is, you may laugh at me now, but this is no joke. It's a lot of work to get the naming convention hardened and tested. So don't take my word for it. Use a suffix, go for it, try it out, do combinations here. So let me show you again. I'm going to do filters, and they have different types. So you can have groups, scope. This is important. So I'm looking at a resource group is the first thing you want to make up. So you can see here that he's fragmented up, and he says, listen, if you were to do an Azure Bricks workspace, this is an analytics and what is that? Internet of Things. Let's go. Here's a function app. Okay, look here. So that's how you create a function app. So watch. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna take it from here. Okay, and I'm gonna copy that. All right. I'm just gonna shove that here. Compute and web. Right? That's the group, and then what it is, the asset type, and the scope. This is on a global level. You see, this is named within a resource group. Now, if you look at, you see these guys here? This is just, and just hover over it. This is named 28. The max length is 24. So if you were to make that, you want to know these things. This is all your names for everything. It's endless work here, folks. You see here, what is this? A virtual machine. Now, too long. Max length is 15. Does not contain. It does not conform because he's done the regular expression and it doesn't work. So you couldn't name the virtual machine net. It won't work. In fact, let's go and try to make a virtual machine. Let's see what happens. I'm going to copy this here. Okay. Just copy that. In fact, let's copy the whole line, right? Okay. I'm creating a virtual machine in my resource group. And let's just copy that, like I said, and let's bring that over here. Okay. And I'm going to show you, this is what we're going to do. We're testing my naming convention. Let's go back to Azure. And some people may say, "This is Kennel. I don't like the way you do your videos. You're just like making it up as you go along." Well, yeah, that's how you do it. You make it up, you play with it, you try it out. Let's go to this resource group here, and I'm going to create a new resource. What is the resource? It's a virtual machine I'm making, right? So I just type it in here, virtual machine, Pick the virtual machines. Which type do you want? I'm just going to take a free account virtual machine. Sounds good to me. I love all that free stuff. And I'm going to create it. And